I was in jeopardy of losing my first home. I was 18 years old, had no business probably buying a little townhouse, but it was 2009. The prices were low and I was ready.
Yes.
So I jumped on it. I couldn't afford to rent on campus. So I just bought a little townhouse up the street from the college. And then I realized, well, I'm a double major. I work 2 jobs. I'm still not able to meet my mortgage. And that was when someone first mentioned Airbnb. And so my very first listing was for a pull-out sofa in the living room.
Hey,
Hello, hello.
how are you?
Cannot complain. How about yourself?
I'm good. I just finished a 3-day fast, water only. And yeah, I feel great. I went to one of my favorite restaurants, had some Indian, and it warmed my heart. The naan and the curry just touched my soul because I was done, literally.
Yeah, after 3 days. That's impressive. That's some real brain power there.
Not really, because I did a 15-day fast earlier in the summer, and that was a whole nother ordeal.
Impressive? Scary?
You know, aside from the times where I got up way too fast and was like, "Whoa, I got to catch my balance," not scary whatsoever. Felt great. I was an inherent skeptic of the entire purpose behind fasting. But the reason I did it was because, I'm highly competitive and I was challenged, and I was like, you don't know jack squat about me. So, fast forward 15 days thereafter, I lost 30 pounds and felt phenomenal. And, yeah, I plan on incorporating like a 3 to 5 day fast, in my, life, every few months or so. Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway from it?
Um, it confirmed what I already knew, was that, anything is possible and that you can do anything you put your mind to. Um, I love to eat. I love food. It's like my love language. I don't know why eating isn't a love language, but it should be, you know?
Yeah, I definitely feel you there. My dad used to do 30-day fasts,
Okay.
but it was like in a reverse. So he would cut out like meat and then all solid foods, and then he would juice foods, and then he would do filtered juice, and then it was water for a week, and then he would add it all back in the opposite direction. And I'm just like, I don't know, bro.
That's incredible, though. I mean, you get to learn your body, see how you react to different things, understand, what keeps you up at night, what, makes you tired. And
Same guy who he meditated, did an entire root canal without any anesthesia. And so he was like, yeah, he's like, it just teaches you to control your body. I'm like, I don't know, man. This taco feels great.
I hear you. And that's the thing, right? I find that balance is what it's all about. Like, any too far in one direction, and you're just, off the reservation and doing more harm than good, in my opinion, And so I'm going to eat my tacos, yes, I'm plant-based. So I try to predominantly eat plants because, I feel the best when I do, but, I still like meat. I'm going to have some oxtails when I drive by my favorite Jamaican restaurant, I'm going to limit that to once a month instead of like every other
Go for
day.
the fattiest meat possible when you go for it.
Exactly.
Oh, well,
So, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a little while since we last connected, right? We were at the Airbnb Superhost Summit in Atlanta for the second time, and you were wheeling and dealing and just, as energized as ever. And I was like, oh man, I love that girl. She's just like super passionate about what she does and helping us do better at what we do collectively. And I would imagine you got some of that energy from, your career as a teacher, back in school? You taught, what was it, seventh grade, ninth grade? You were middle schoolers?
Seventh grade science predominantly. But I did teach 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th, and 12th throughout 10 years. Kind of when you have teacher shortages, you get put where they need you. And I taught social studies and forensic science and pre-medical terminology. But 7th grade science was really my jam.
Okay. I don't know how you did it. I hated middle school. They were little butts.
Everybody does. That's the best part.
They're psychos.
Nobody likes middle school. Middle schoolers don't even like themselves.
This is true. This is true. So how did you use your like superpowers to, connect with those middle schoolers, and how did that translate to you being able to connect and provide like quality experiences for your guests at your place?
So honestly, I started teaching middle school because I hated it. Long story short. In fact, when I was getting my master's, I remember the professor was going around the room asking us, why did you become a teacher? Who inspired you? What was your amazing story? And everyone around me just had these beautiful, uplifting stories of these phenomenal teachers that they had that changed their lives. And when they got to me, I was like, well, do y'all want the real story? I said, I hated middle school so much. And I had so many horrific teachers that I knew I could do it better than them. And someone needs to, because I am a natural learner. I like to learn. I like to teach. I like to help people. It's always been ingrained, and ground in me. But I hated school, which made no sense, because you would think someone who is good at school, who enjoys those type of activities, would love it. But I hated it because of the company and the teachers. So I decided somebody's got to do it, and it might as well be me. Then you teach middle school for 10 years, and you learn that no one's ever going to be happy all the time. So how can I make you as interested as possible? How can I make you as happy as possible? And the biggest thing with middle school is prior planning. Their attention span at that point is around 6 to 7 minutes tops. And I think when you add in video games and movies, if you watch a movie, not for the fact of watching it, but pay attention to how many times the screen changes. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I got a call and it cut me out. So if you pay attention to how many times the screen changes, I think the average is like every 3 seconds. And so when they're used to this constant input, especially with all the technology today, and, you've got TikToks at your fingertips, and I think their attention span, I don't even know one that had a 6-minute attention span. And so I was like, okay, how can I set this up? How can I plan so that I'm on top of everything? I have all this forethought of what could go wrong, because a lot can go wrong, especially when hormones are screaming louder than anyone around you. How can I set up a lesson so that they feel like they're in control, but really I'm the one that designed it on the back end? And I think that really translated to hosting, because it's like, I know you might be difficult coming in, as we know some guests are, not all, but a lot. So how can I plan for what do you want before you know you want it? What thing are you going to do to keep your attention at all times? What could go wrong that I'm going to mitigate before it even goes wrong? And how can I let you feel like you set up this amazing vacation and it just all happened to fall into place so perfectly, when it was really me in the background orchestrating it like a little puppet master? I like that. And then at the end of the day, a lot of my favorite students were my most difficult students. I was also a difficult student, so I get it. I was the one who had to, headbutt every teacher and what about this, and play devil's advocate and argue it just to my absolute core. And teachers hated that, which was another reason I didn't like school, because I thought, like, I want to be challenged, but to be challenged, I want to challenge. And with my students, I learned to embrace that challenge. Question me, make me grow, make me better. Tell me why, Miss Smith is a better teacher, because I want to be a better teacher. And I just have always had that innate desire to be better. And I think in hosting, it's the same way. I maybe get someone who's a difficult guest, or they are someone who's just going to nitpick every little thing, or things do go wrong. And it happens to go wrong during that person's stay. Now, what can I do to embrace that challenge, to bring us together instead of tear us apart, and make you love being my guest even when things don't go right? Because I made you love being my student even when things don't go right in the classroom all the time.
That's awesome. There's so much to unpack there. I'm trying to work through the details of what you just shared, but my attention span, I'm also struggling with the 5 seconds or less nature. But I think I got something for you. So it's beautiful how your history in your childhood led you to wish to be the change you wish to see in the world, right? And then in being intentional with the way that you engage with your students, and the way that you planned your lessons, and the way that you empowered them to, engage on the subject matter, especially in the face of, TikTok and Instagram and the like. You were able to use those skills to then translate over into this new endeavor, being, the short-term rental space, being an Airbnb ambassador, Superhost. I don't know. I confuse what are we supposed to say all those things? It's such a long time.
Superhost ambassador, I guess.
There you go. Superhost ambassador, right? And you took the balls and strikes as they came, the positive, the good with the bad, and you made the most of it, and so like that proactive approach to planning an experience for your guests really goes a long way to being able to mitigate some of the issues that can, arise. But then there are the unknowns, the unforeseen. And I think that the work that we do in the beginning with how we communicate with our guests, with how we furnish our listing, how responsive we are, and what have you, that can build credibility, build goodwill, good faith. So when, those black swan events like, a dishwasher being clogged and leaking and flooding, and you have to move them to another property that you have or what have you, or put them in a hotel room, they are understanding, and they don't, rate you poorly because you've dropped off some Japanese donuts and you've written them a thank you card and you mailed them their earrings, which I actually have to go do right after this because they left them in the property. And so, hearing your experience is super duper awesome. I want to ask you about your thoughts on just Airbnb in general. Currently we have a lot of conversation around the rules that have been passed in New York, and how now 30 days or less, or 30 days or more is what is allowed. And you must live on site, right? You are based in Atlanta, or the Atlanta suburbs, if I'm not mistaken. And there's some different regulatory situations where you are versus in Atlanta proper. But just today, even, there was some legislation passed in, I believe, Florence, Italy, literally like 5 hours ago. And they have banned providing new short-term rental leases because, in 2016, they only had like 6,000 short-term rentals in the city center, and that ballooned over the last, 4 or 5 years to 3 times as many at like 16, 17,000. And so, people are talking about short-term rentals, Airbnbs, taking away from the affordable housing stock, and we see governments responding. What do you think about your business moving forward where you are? And just in general, to those who want to get into the business or who want to survive moving forward in the business?
So I take a more capitalist approach here, to be honest. Of course, I love Airbnb. I'm passionate about it. This is my full-time job. I try to exude I love the platform. I love what it can do for people. But the main reason that I love Airbnb is because when I started, I was in jeopardy of losing my first home. I was 18 years old, had no business probably buying a little townhouse, but it was 2009. The prices were low and I was ready.
They were so good. Yes.
So I jumped on it. I couldn't afford to rent on campus. So I just bought a little townhouse up the street from the college. And then I realized, well, I'm a double major. I work 2 jobs. I'm still not able to meet my mortgage. And that was when someone first mentioned Airbnb. And so my very first listing was for a pull-out sofa in the living room. And then when my roommate decided she was going her separate ways, I ended up Airbnb-ing her room. And so for me, I am extremely passionate about sharing your space and in private room listings and allowing people to profit from their homes, especially now that the housing crisis, has, I think, become worse than it was in the early or mid 2000s, mainly because the cost of living is so high, and we're not seeing career income keep up with that cost of living. So when it comes to sharing your space, I am a diehard. You should absolutely be allowed to. I think that should be the first and foremost, marketing point of Airbnb. This is a way to hack your home and to make your home make you money. When it comes to having secondary properties, that's where I'm a little more capitalistic. And yes, Airbnb is a hot trend. Everyone's buying a house, throwing it together, listing it. But markets naturally correct themselves. And I'm now seeing a lot of people who are complaining that they're not making enough money, especially here in Metro Atlanta. I've seen at least 5 or 6 properties that I managed personally going up for sale because they're just not bringing in the revenue that they anticipated. And as harsh as that can be for the individual, that's part of a market correction. Everybody races in and then everybody funnels out. And the ones that are really smart numbers or really well managed or have really great reviews, who are really strong listings, those are the ones that will prevail. I also think that not every host is a good host. Not every property is a good listing. So some of those should be filtered out. Now, it can be daunting for a new host to hear that because you're like, okay, well, I don't have reviews. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this property is a good option. So I try to recommend to people, if you can't support this house on your own, don't try to do it with Airbnb. Or unless you know that you can support it, you've really looked at numbers. I often gear people towards house hacking to begin with so that they can understand, so that you're not investing $500,000 into something that is a maybe.
Amen to that. Oh my Lord. Say it again. Say it again for the people in the back. Listen, I'm so glad that I found another house hacker here. And that's a part of our original journey. We started with a 2-bed, 1-bath, single family property that was only 1,100 square feet. And we went $80,000 in debt, rehabbing it. Thanksgiving came, we went to my mom's house, and a friend of ours from, in the penitentiary was like, hey, you guys think about this thing. And we're like, well, okay, sure. And so we threw it on Airbnb and we made our month's mortgage and then a hefty sum thereafter in, a week. So we were like, oh, this ain't too bad, but with that, we were methodical in the expansion of our house. We had a garage apartment, we had a carport that we then expanded, which became, I want to say 750, 800 square foot addition onto that property, another $80,000 in that. When we moved over there, we put the 2-bedroom on full time. And just to your point about sharing spaces, I really want to reiterate the fact that, with the stress that a lot of people are facing, with the income that, has not risen to meet the cost of living and the other inflationary components that are, just eating away at the dollar on a daily basis, reframing your relationship with the resources that you have is so crucial. I like to call it a threshold of pain, but when you consider the income that you can make, right? When you consider that on average, the typical American spends 40-50% of their income on their housing, their living expense. When you think about putting those dollars back in your pocket, I think that's not very painful to put money back in your pocket. It's like how we're having the conversation. Every time I have a conversation with someone, like, well, I'm not really comfortable with sharing my space. I don't feel safe here. And I'm like, there are a lot of different tools you can use to protect yourselves, whether it's, smart locks, cameras, and the like, in order to provide you that security. But when it comes to, being an individual in college, a dual major, buying a home and needing to figure it out financially, you made such an amazing decision. And with the resources Airbnb is now putting behind more shared spaces, and experience-focused hosting, there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of people.
Well, I will tell you, I hosted my spaces and shared my spaces for 8 years. I lived in Charleston. And then when my husband and I got engaged, we moved in together, and I said, we need to find a house that has space that we can hack. That was a ground rule for me. And he was like, what do you mean? We have 2 incomes. We're moving in together. We don't need this. And I said, it's not need, it's want. I haven't paid my mortgage since I was 18. I don't want to start now. Yeah. And so for him, he was very apprehensive. He's a very private person. He doesn't like people in his space. Whereas me, I'm like, come on in, welcome.
It's the low country and very friendly, very welcome.
Whereas he was like, oh my God, the neighbors are knocking on the door. I'm like, yeah, tell them come on in. And so in the beginning, we had a lot of ground rules where I was like, okay, you tell me what makes you uncomfortable and we'll find a way to mitigate it. So even simple things. We had a basement apartment. It had a separate entrance. And so we wanted separate parking. So creating separate parking spaces. Then we put a deadbolt on the basement door for the deadbolt section and the handle on either side so they could lock us, we could lock them. Little things that I guess just made him feel better. After about, I would say, a year and a half, it was a long learning curve for him. Then he realized it might be slightly uncomfortable having someone live beneath us, especially being right below us. Walk carefully, can't play your drums late at night. He's a drummer. Let's have certain stipulations so that the guests are comfortable as well. But that was a lot more comfortable to us than us having to get second jobs. I would much rather be home, not playing the drum kit at midnight, than be at a bar slinging drinks at midnight to try to make up for this amount of income. And then in addition to that, it allowed us to raise the value of our actual home. So when we sold that house, we sold it as an income producing primary residence. So we sold it completely furnished, including all of our furniture upstairs. The buyer bought everything from the forks to the washcloths. We took out our clothes. But there was a huge discrepancy in the appraisal value because the home was not worth what we wanted to sell it for. But because it was a primary residence home upstairs, he got a lot of the tax benefits there. And an income producing property in the basement, he actually paid $100,000 cash over the appraisal value to buy the business as well. And I think that was really the light switch for my husband, who was like, whoa, wait a minute. Not only did we just live for free and plus a little extra, depending on the month, for a year and a half, but we just literally doubled our home's value in a year and a half.
That's amazing.
And we couldn't have done that working second jobs.
This is true. The power of short-term rentals, the power of Airbnb, the power of house hacking, the power of real estate investing, the power of being focused on financial freedom and doing it a little differently. Your husband's reservations, given you guys' differences in personalities, my partner and I, we are polar opposites, but we were completely aligned on this vision on moving forward with the utility of our primary residence as an investment vehicle to, reduce our burden on the mortgage and to facilitate further transactions moving forward. We used the home equity line of credit on that property. We bought it at 167. When it all came and done, I think it was appraised at like 489 or something after. And so, yeah. Oh man, I just lost my train of thought. I'm just so amazed at you being able to, get $100,000 on top of the appraisal value. And it's the proof of stake, the proof of concept, the proof of business, right? And timing was a big factor in that, right? But I want to talk about the conversation that you and your husband had in order to get on the same page, with moving forward, because there's a lot of people who have significant others who, are holding them back, or at the very least are not fully bought in. And so if you have the latter, not fully bought in, it's up to you, the individual, to, move them out and to, pave the path forward so they can, see the light at the end of the tunnel. But if an individual is, holding you back, and you hear stories like yours, hear stories like mine, and you know what's possible, do you think can you speak to how they can maybe have those conversations, how you had those conversations to, get to where you are today in alignment with one another?
So ironically, it kind of goes back to me teaching. I had students who a lot of times would say, like, I don't like to read. Okay, well, what is it about reading that you don't like? Specifically, do you not like staring at it? Does it hurt your eyes? Is it difficult to understand because you have a processing trouble there? Is it the vocabulary because the verbiage is too difficult for your level? Let's get really, really, or is it the content? You don't like what this book is about. And so sometimes with my students, I would really, really, really break it down. What is it about this that isn't appealing to you? And I did the same thing with my husband. What is it about hosting that really bothers you? Is it the fact that you can't play your drums at midnight? Okay, well, how can we work around that? How about we, block every Tuesday? And now Tuesday is band practice day, and you can play your drums until 4 p.m. at the next check-in. Or is it security? Okay, do we, like that first house that we hosted together, we put cameras on all 4 corners of the house. We had a doorbell camera into the basement. We had a doorbell camera on the front of ours. After a while, you get lax.
You should have made it
so well, or at least he did. So now we've got 1 doorbell camera on our front door, and that's it. But it was more about him still understanding what was going on. I think hosting takes a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Like gall. Like you gotta have some tough skin sometimes. You gotta be able to put up with some BS. I had 8 years of experience doing it. He had 0. And here I am saying, okay, you've never even had a roommate your entire life, and now we're going to have a different roommate every day.
Yeah.
I've never lived alone in my entire life, so for me it was normal. Before Airbnb, my roommates came from Craigslist and paid way less. So it was a win for me. For him, felt like a step back. He also saw it as a loss of independence almost, because he thought, well, if I'm financially stable, I don't need someone to help pay the bills. And it was a pride aspect almost. And that was probably the hardest barrier to come across, because I can come up with switching locks. I can come up with cameras. There's programs. You can use Superhog. You can do background checks. How in depth do you want to be? The pride issue for him was the hardest one, because he felt like as a man, he should provide the household. And by letting guests come in, it was almost saying he couldn't do it on his own. I will say working through that and just kind of explaining to him, it's not that we can't. This is a choice we are making. This is an active choice. You're not Elizabeth, 18 years old, backed in a corner going, oh my God, the mortgage company just overdrafted again. You're 35 and you're saying, welcome to my home. I want you to be here. I want to provide this. And it also changed our lives in a way that we could reap the benefits and he could see this is just another job. It's just a different form of work. So since then, he and I have both quit our 9-to-5 jobs. I stopped teaching. He was an arborist. We do full-time Airbnb. We now get to travel all over the country, hopefully the world soon. And we set up new listings. We do design, we do installation, furnishing, like take it from an empty property all the way to a completely ready and managed house, which is now mainly what our bread and butter is. And I've shown him that this is the independence that we want. I don't want you still looking at trees all day and us have to be stuck home. And I think the most validating moment was actually the last couple of months. My dad was diagnosed with cancer in January, and it was a very short battle, five months from the time he found out he passed away. And had I been teaching, that would have been January through May. I couldn't take off 5 months. I wouldn't get paid. If you quit mid-year, they actually can pull your teaching certificate from the State Department. So I wouldn't have had the options that I did. Instead, I said, honey, we work completely independently. We work from wherever we want in the world. We take on whatever jobs we want. Let's go live with my parents for 5 months. And that's exactly what we did. And just worked completely remotely. And there was so many times when I would look at him and I would go, this is why we do Airbnb. This is what makes it worth it. This is the most validating part. And now my mom, unfortunately, was just diagnosed about a week ago. And so it's been another hard hit. But I said, you know what? It's just another reminder. And not that there's any good time to get cancer, but had it been a year earlier, I wouldn't have been able to support my family the way I did. Here we are, and it's like we have the financial ability to do it because we have all this extra revenue coming in. We have the freedom to do it because we quit our 9-to-5s. This is why we do. And now he's the bigger cheerleader. He's the one that's always going out and trying to sell other people on it and telling it. He was like, oh my gosh, no, you got to do this. Oh, bro, forget that roommate. Now you got to try Airbnb. Because it's really just the proof is in the pudding.
Proof is in the pudding. And to the point of, having a conversation with a spouse and, getting them on board with moving forward to utilize this tool as an investment vehicle to transform your lives. How you approach that conversation is key, and you utilizing your experience as a teacher to, really hone in and drill down on and go 7 layers deep on the why behind the lack of desire or unwillingness to participate. That's step one, but also another step is time. It does take moving forward in whatever ways possible to, pursue that path as an individual and continue to show the proof in the pudding to your partner to then really get them to buy in. And, there's no greater buy-in than when you have an unfortunate event that comes into your life, be it cancer, be it a hurricane that decimates you, be it being fired from your job or what have you. There's so many phenomena that can occur that we just are not ready for. But once you have built that foundation externally on your own, and you're not solely reliant on, your typical 9-to-5, then you have that safety net, you have that cushion. And especially in a time where, we look at the U.S.'s debt and how, our deficits are ridiculous. I mean, I think we're at a point where our interest payments on debt is, more or approaching more than or 6% of our GDP. It's like double. Anyway, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but My point is entitlements are going to be cut. You know, you look at things like Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare, they are going to be on the chopping block moving forward, and you can't depend on Uncle Sam to support you. You can't depend on Uncle Sam to give you the time to spend with your mother, to spend with your father in the last moments of their life. You have to depend on yourself, and, you know, investing in yourselves through Airbnb, through entrepreneurship is so crucial. And I'm just so grateful for you to have had the experience to spend that time with your family, because decoupling your relationship with time and money, separating those two, and understanding that time is the most important and valuable asset that we have, and that is what the currency of life is, and being able to choose what you spend it on every day is so empowering. And, you know, hearing your story about the experience that you had is crazy. It's beautiful.
I could not have said it better, you know, and time is the one thing that no matter how much you work, no matter how much you slave, you can't get more of. Like, I can work 15 jobs, but I can't live 15 lives.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that's really the biggest turning point, was realizing how much more free our lives are. We spent the last week and a half in Florida setting up a new condo, also hanging out on the beach, drinking Mai Tais. And like, don't worry, honey, don't forget, you're clocked in right now.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I want to circle.
It's been a journey.
Yes,
I was going to say it's not a one conversation and all of a sudden someone's sold. You know, Troy especially was very sensitive to, okay, well, what time do you think they're going to be here? I don't know, honey, sometime after checkout or check-in. Okay, well, what time do you think they're going to leave? No, I'm 4:11. And so there's a lot of learning curve there. And I think the biggest part is patience, especially if you're the one that wants Airbnb and you're the one that sees the value in it, understanding that these other concerns are valid. You know, it's not unheard of to wonder, hey, am I in this house by myself or not? It's not unheard of to go, am I safe? Is my car safe? Is my wife safe? But when you see it over time, you see the benefits, you have these conversations, and you also have to meet in the middle and say, okay, these are your non-negotiables. You know, he does not like renting the spare room in our house while we are home. That was one of his non-negotiables. Sure. But the moment we leave town, that house gets listed, or that room gets listed. He wanted smart locks on our bedroom door so that we knew if someone was trying to open it. Sure. Got a smart lock for the bedroom door. So, you know, you have to understand that it's not going to be all right, we're doing Airbnb and this is what we do and here we go. It's a learning curve and a learning process, and that patience and that understanding is first and foremost. And if things go awry, you might take 2 or 3 steps back. And it might be, okay, yes, the house did get kind of destroyed. Okay, I got to eat a little crow. How can we avoid this in the future? And it might cause him to go, you know what? I don't want to do this for the next month. Okay, let's take a little break. And really working together when you do have a partner who's not totally sold on it.
Yeah, you know, we've had some experiences, so mostly good ones in battles, but we did have a really bad experience recently where we had some drug dealers staying in one of our properties for a week and they destroyed it. We're doing crack and every other thing imaginable in there. I literally know because I was there pulling out the buds of weed from the ambulance. I was not there buying crack, no. But I was there disposing of all the mess that they left behind. And shout out to Airbnb for having, you know, the damage policies that they do, because this was a VRBO reservation and there was no coverage whatsoever for repairing it. Thankfully, we are, you know, seasoned real estate investors. We have many contract relations. And so our mold remediation company was able to get over there and, you know, drop some equipment. I actually already had some equipment of my own to aerate and dry out the property, because I think they flooded the bathroom and just the water was all over the vinyl floor. And so anyway, with such a quick reaction response, you know, we were able to get it wrapped up, get everything repainted, and the fix might have cost us, you know, a few $100, whereas another individual laughing experience, it could be a huge headache. It can be, really, really scary. But there's good with the bad always. And to your point about Airbnb not being just like this ring the register, if you fall out of the boat, you're going to hit water. Like, that's what a lot of people thought that ran to the business over the last few years with the, recovery and travel from the pandemic. We saw, nights booked on the platform balloon. We saw, average prices or for nightly rentals balloon. And there has been a re-rating, we're going through a shift in the volume of stays, in the earning potential in certain spaces. And so to your point about people who, don't operate effectively, who don't plan and provide a quality experience, they're going to wash out. And that just leaves, in my opinion, further opportunity for those that are committed to the craft, understand what they're doing, and, focus on doing it with, service of the highest in mind.
Yeah, I actually, when we were down setting up that condo in Cedar Key, I don't know if you tracked Hurricane Idalia, but Cedar Key took a direct hit. It was actually the worst city hit in the U.S. The entire island was just decimated. It was so sad. But we use it as an opportunity. So we renovated the entire condo, made it more renter friendly, took out all the carpet, put in waterproof vinyls because it's the beach. Come on.
Sure.
How do you have carpet in here? And then we redesigned the entire thing just to be more renter friendly. And I'm trying to think of everything that I can do to make it easy to clean, easy to manage, easy for guests, intuitive during their stay. What things can I mitigate that aren't even problems yet? And I feel so bad because there was a unit down and over one. And one of the nights when we were there, this girl is like so agitated on the phone, almost to the point of tears because her door lock wasn't working. And the company that managed it promised on-site management. They actually have a management company for this condo complex, but they don't work Saturdays and Sundays. And I don't know if you know short-term rentals, but
a lot of check-ins, a lot of checkouts Saturday and Sunday.
That's like, yeah, what do you mean? And so I don't know if she ever got inside. We didn't stay by her, but I just told her, I was like, listen, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Please don't think this is everyone's experience. And next time, instead of renting 102, go for 201.
Shameless plug. I understand.
Shameless plug. But no, it really reiterated though that there's some people who just didn't think it all the way through. And unfortunately, that the market corrects for that. You start to get bad reviews and your listing starts to tank, and that's kind of the name of the game. Now, I'm not saying you a bad review and your business is over, thank God, or I would have been over a long time ago. But when, your averages really start to fall, or you really have flaws in your listing, or you have flaws in your hosting, I think hosting is more important than listing. Your property will appeal to somebody. Your hosting may not. And I think that's also the most underrated component of it. People think if I have a big, nice house with big, nice furniture in this big, nice location, that the money will just flock to me. And that's just not the case. So I think for people that are getting started, making sure you don't underrate messages and availability. I bought my husband and I Apple Watches for his birthday last year. Happy birthday to me. Because when we sleep, we wear them. I can't afford to miss a phone call. If someone's locked out at 2 a.m., I get up at 2 a.m. There is no alternative there. And I think that's the biggest part where I'm seeing these listings that are now falling out and that are now selling or delisting, is they underrated the management aspect.
Okay. I think people also underrated their underwriting of the deal, you know, buying properties in areas that not really understanding the market dynamics. For instance, we're here in Orlando and everyone's like, oh my God, it's so saturated. You've got to be struggling. I'm like, no, we're doing good. Because
It's a
in the
hot spot to
minds,
visit.
exactly, but it's not a hot spot to visit in the way that most people think. Most people associate Orlando with Disney World, but Disney World is so far away. It's in Osceola, Orange County, Kissimmee area, right? And yes, they are building droves upon droves of short-term rental communities left and right, as far as the eye can see. And they come with their own management, property management built in that you can choose, or you can do another one. And you know, when I go and visit these places, I see green pools, I see poorly managed properties that, you know, have tread marks on the stairwells and just are not a place that I myself would want to stay. And so in how I operate, you know, it's, do I want to be here? Is this the quality of service that I expect in what I do, right? But that Kissimmee, Davenport area is strictly tourism for the most part. And what I find is that there's a need for short-term rentals everywhere. The need is pervasive. And that's from your residential communities out in, you know, farmland, flyover country to, you know, your urban centers. And most people incorrectly associate short-term rentals with that tourism vacation rental market. But there's so much more. There's such a robust need all over the place that serves so very many different people. And if individuals are starting today, they need to realize that fact and understand who's coming to the areas that they're in, whether it's traveling professionals doing work on the highway expansion. You know, I just had a contractor leave one of my properties who we have the I-4 Ultimate project going on. He's an electrical contractor. He stayed at one of our properties for 2 months. You know, I just had some girls, one from Montana, another one from Nicaragua, come here to stay with us for 3 months, who were ballerinas at the local Orlando Ballet. And so just, you never know who you can service in offering your property. And I would just, you know, say, keep trying, guys. It's going to be all right. But you've got to first, hopefully, I hope everyone listening has bought their properties in a way where they're not over leveraged and needing to earn a certain amount, you know, because
that's why I'd say if you can't afford it without Airbnb, you can't afford it with Airbnb.
that is the truth.
I know that's not always the rule of thumb, but you got to take into consideration seasonality and when things go wrong. And what if the property is flooded and can't rent for 3 or 4 months? What if another pandemic comes? I mean, if you said to me in 2019, hey, Elisabeth, you have a lot of properties in touristy areas. What if a pandemic hits? I'd be like, what, are you out of your mind? Like, well, what if all travel stops? That would never happen. Like, it just wouldn't even, it's not even fathomable. And yet,
until it is.
there it was. And I had to do a lot of adjusting, and I actually started catering more to residential short-term rental as opposed to vacation. And I've kind of stayed, now I do have a little bit of both. You know, I've got a pretty broad portfolio, to be honest. But I started moving more towards budget stays, very small listings. I'm talking under 50 square feet campers and basements, finished rooms over garages. That's more my passion and therefore becomes more my niche. And those, I never saw a slowdown because someone always wants to rent a place for $50 a night, no matter what. You stay booked. And then I had, you know, very opulent, large properties with private pools and certainly made for short-term renting. And those were the ones that were the hardest to fill. And they were also the investors who were then like needing that income the most.
Amen. I find that a lot of people neglect that lower tier price point nightly stay segment because, and Airbnb, in my opinion, is guilty of this too. You know, the marketing of the stay in a missile silo or stay on a pirate ship or stay in, a mushroom style cabin, or an igloo or whatever the heck, it's just like they focus so heavily on associating the opulent offerings with what short-term rentals are. And there's just so much more to offer, so much more out there. And there's many people supporting those other offerings every day.
Well, I'll tell you another shameless plug. If you're talking about the pirate ship in Virginia that went like viral, I managed it. I was one of the
I bet you did. How did you get that one? Please tell me how you got that one.
I manage that. Owner has a number of different properties, and she kind of did the reverse. She started residential and started going just quirkier and quirkier. And she was like, Elizabeth, tell me when to stop. And I was like, don't stop. Don't keep doing it. Get weirder. So loved that. It unfortunately, being a boat, it sunk and everything was lost. And because it was a short-term rental and it was a boat, we struggled to find insurance on it because a lot of insurance companies don't want you on a mobile structure or they don't want you to have short-term rentals. So it sunk and was just gone. It was a total loss with no insurance or anything. RIP, because it still hurts my soul. However, I will tell you, next to our house, we rent our basement apartment. We rent our spare room when we're out of town. And we have a little 16-foot pull behind camper parked next to the house. And that camper has the highest ROI of any property that I manage. It has a higher ROI than that cool pirate ship ever did.
Wow. So give me the numbers on this ROI. How much was this camper? What year was it? What model was it? What are we really talking about here? Because yes, we see Airbnb move into the, you can do the houseboat, you can do the campers now, you can do rooms. They're really trying to make it a one-stop shop for just service. But a lot of people are fixated on the brand association of the opulence and the bigger, 8, 10, 12 bedroom themed houses. But they don't understand that, like, to really, really do well in those areas, you're talking on top of just renovating a property, like at least here in Kissimmee, after you renovate it, you got to buy it. Say, we're talking 8, 10, or 12 bedroom home. They might be, 800 to 1.2, 1.3 million, right? And then you have to rehab it. And then you have to spend an additional $200,000 to $250,000 in theming just to really, really meet the mark of being at the upper echelon of offerings in the market that, earn that multiple millions of dollars a year.
Every 2 years, you have to re-renovate because Frozen is not cool anymore.
Yeah, or new Buzz Lightyear is coming out and, you got to be on it.
And then you don't think about the amount of supplies that 20 people require and how many sheets you'll go through, how many towels you'll go through, because now you have a pool. Now you have to have pool maintenance. Now you have to have lawn maintenance. Yeah, it's a constant chase.
Doesn't sound like it's a constant chase with this little pull from behind camper. So let's rewind and get back to that.
So my husband and I bought a house that had been vacant for 22 years. It was condemned by the city a few years ago after a tree fell on it. He's an arborist, so hence the tree. We came to see the house. I loved the area. We're downtown Stone Mountain. It's called Stone Mountain Village, where it's historic houses, very established, and houses don't ever go for sale because someone's already on the chopping block to buy it before you ever list. Except for this one. To say it was in disrepair is not
putting it lightly.
It took 16 months of rehab to get it livable. I am proud to say we are in it. But during that time, I was looking at Airbnbs to rent, and unfortunately, there's not a lot of residential style Airbnbs in this area. You get downtown Atlanta, big city fun. But I just wanted crash and live here while I work from home and I'm working on my project house.
Yeah.
So we decided it was cheaper to buy a camper on Marketplace. Paid $9,000 for it, parked it next to the house. We lived in it during the renovation. And when the renovation was over, it was like, okay, cool. We have this itty bitty 16-foot camper. I mean, we lived in it for 9 months with 2 dogs. It is livable, but I ain't gonna say it's cush.
A little tight. A little tight.
Our bathroom was 16 inches by 16 inches and had a shower and a toilet in that space. So you had to straddle the toilet and use a wand. Hence why I cut 18 inches off my hair.
Oh boy.
So it was an adventure, but I was like, you know what? I mean, maybe someone would rent it on Airbnb. There's not a lot of hotels near here. There's one historic Stone Mountain hotel that is stupid expensive. And then there's a Marriott in Stone Mountain, which is an older but like higher end Marriott. So there's not anywhere though that you can just like crash, if that makes sense, because that's what we were looking for and we couldn't find it.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided that we would list it on Airbnb, just see how it does. And if it didn't work, we would sell it. What's the harm? Now it nets, I would say, about $1,000 a month, which some people may be going, ugh, $1,000, that's not even worth it. However, after we lived in it for almost a year, which means it paid itself off in rent alone. It's sitting beside the house. You know, we could turn around and sell it. And when you look at the cost, $9,000, and I'm making $1,000 a month on it, profit, that's after paying my cleaning fees, that's after buying my supplies, that's after replacing sheets, etc. That is the highest ROI of any other property in my portfolio.
$1,000 a month goes a long way to, securing your ability to work from anywhere, live from anywhere, do whatever you want when you want, and to buy back your time. It goes leaps and bounds beyond just the dollar figure,
Yeah, and I have some properties that are much nicer, much more opulent, but they're netting around the same because their costs are so much higher. I have almost zero cost here.
You know what? Just talking about the insurance that you were speaking about, like the insurance marketplace here in Florida is obscene. The state-backed fund Citizens just passed the proposal to the legislature that was kicked back to raise premiums by like 15%. And they were like, no, you've got to do better here. But what actually ended up happening was, I think they just got it approved at like 10%, but they passed some legislation that says if a private insurer makes an offer to a homeowner, they must accept that and get off of the Citizens plan. And so what's going to happen is a lot of these people are going to have to accept those private plans. And with the way, climate change has been impacting the strength and severity and frequency of the storms and the effects in these communities in the state, the premiums are going to go up, 30, 40% next year. And it's crazy. So for you to have found something that can, still perform well in the face of all these ballooning costs that a lot of people have, that's amazing.
Well, and if you look at it in terms of housing numbers, let's say you spent $900,000 on a house and furnishing, et cetera, et cetera. That's the same as you making $100,000 a month on that house. Like, that's the same proportions here. So the numbers are smaller, but the proportions are far greater. And you buy a house for $900,000, you're going to have so much more cost as far as Wi-Fi, water, internet, pest control, lawn maintenance. I don't have any of those additional costs, right? Yeah. Because it's already here, already on my property, already hooked up, which is, again, why I'm a big fan of hacking. And that's only one portion of our property. The basement apartment is actually the main rental. And then when we go out of town, throw me a couple extra $100 for a week and stay in my spare bedroom. And none of that ends up costing me any extra in mortgage. My mortgage is the same. Doesn't cost me any extra in insurance. My insurance is the same. Potentially utilities, but looking at the return, please.
Right. That's peanuts, baby. Go ahead.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people underestimate that when they look for Airbnbs and they want to come in and they want to get the big, giant, nice, new, get everybody's attention. But I'll tell you, when things come in a pinch and when we hit another market crash like we did in 2008, it's really hard to fill those opulent listings. It ain't hard to fill my camper.
Amen to that. Speaking of '08, right? Since then, we've constantly been underbuilt, and that's one of the big issues that's leading to the affordability crisis. But also, of the new builds that we've had, predominantly, I want to say more than half to 75% of the new construction have been Class A products. And when you have economic downturns, which quite possibly could happen in the foreseeable future, people go down a peg, and what seems to always, be able to perform are your C and your B class opportunities. And so the fact that you've diversified your approach will give you success moving forward through any market environment. And that's something that I don't think enough people take into consideration.
Well, I actually grew up in the short-term rental industry. My mom was a flight attendant, and then after 9/11, she was furloughed. So she was pushed into retirement. And my brother and I was in 5th grade. My brother was in 3rd grade. So we weren't ready for retirement. And so she actually ended up taking a severance from US Air, and we invested it 1/3 into a cabin. And my mom's stipulation was, I'll give you it was her early retirement check, if you let me manage it. And so that was kind of our first step into short-term rentals. So I grew up my entire life going to these cabins, and then people started hiring my parents to build them, to manage them. When 2008 came, my parents owned 13 luxury mountain cabins on a lake. They owned every single lakefront lot on Lake Watauga because the rest of it was all owned by the Army Corps. So you couldn't build. So if you wanted to stay lakefront on Watauga, they were your only option. And as Corps land got sold off, they bought every single lot, and that was just their niche. We made money hand over fist. Don't get me wrong. Or they. However, I went from living in a 4-story house with an elevator and driving a Mercedes at 15 years old. 2008 was my junior year of high school. And all of a sudden, everything was gone. We lost our house. We lost almost every cabin that we couldn't just quick short sale. I ended up learning all about foreclosure auctions and what it meant to go through bankruptcy. And it was everything that we had was just gone overnight. And then on top of that, debt collectors constantly calling. And so my senior year of high school, it was like, okay, I don't want to do that. How can we reverse? How can we rewind? My dad, on the other hand, also dabbles in real estate, but his was very, very different. He did Section 8 housing, and he would buy little small mill houses and renovate them so that they were decent, cute, tile, wood, things that were very durable. And my mom always would kind of roll her eyes and be like, why do you still mess with these little mill houses? Why are you still fighting for Section 8 approval?
Because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, girl. That's why.
Right? Until that time. Because then we fully depended on those Section 8 checks to feed us. Because everything vacation-wise was gone. And it really was formative for me because I'm 17. I'm ready to take on the world. I wanted to, rebuild what I had known, for those couple years. I guess that's new money for you. But I told myself I will learn from that mistake, if nothing else. watching my parents go through it, watching the downturn in the economy. Thank God I was 17. I hadn't bought a house for myself yet. And I was like, I'm at least going to not repeat this mistake. And I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. It doesn't matter how much money these cabins are making, which they were, but we were so over leveraged. As soon as there was any equity, my parents would pull it out and build the next one. And we just continued and continued and continued until there was no. My dad had a very different mindset when it came to debt and when it came to leveraging yourself.
Elizabeth, give me one second.
And so
I'm
those
sorry.
Section 8 properties.
Can you repeat from the continue to continue part? I lost you there for a second. I was so engaged and then it went,
Sorry.
Oh, give it back. Run it back.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying they would just continue and continue. And we were so cash. We had so much cash. We had so much debt. And then my mom wasn't renting a cabin for $500 a night. And that's not even that high in the grand scheme of things, but it just dried out instantly. People couldn't afford it. But we had a line for was Section 8 housing. We had lines out the door looking for someone looking just a residential property for their family. And so, because I was like, I don't want to ever be in this situation. I want to learn from both, but I want to take a little bit of this and I want to take a little bit of that, and I want to create my own empire. And that's why I have kept. Yeah. And that's why I've kept things so diverse. And that's also why I'm so passionate about having affordable options. I won't take on a house just because it's fancy. I want to take on something that is smart. And a lot of times, smart is not fancy.
Well, that was incredible, just hearing the journey of your youth and what was in the minds of most, just an utter catastrophe, but how out of chaos we can find clarity, and that clarity that you gain in your current situation is going to sustain your business for success moving forward. So I really appreciate you, Elizabeth, sharing with me today. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time. I could talk to you forever. I know that a lot of listeners are going to really take pride in their current positions, speaking about the chaos, and you're like, oh man, you know what? I think I can see a path forward to persevere and be profitable in a new endeavor. And if that endeavor is, Airbnb, assistance with an existing listing, assistance with, getting into the business, how can they reach out to you? How can they connect with you to learn more about all the many wonderful things you're doing?
I do have a website. So it's Meta, META hyphen Capital CAPITA.
All right, perfect. I will be sure to put that.
Marketing thing.
Listen, you are a marketing maven all your own. As long as you're attached with it, then it's sold. So just being yourself is more than enough. All right. Thank you so much.
I just for self. There we go. Sorry, you're going in and out. So perfect.
I know. I got to get some new internet. This is so bad. This is so bad. I'm calling AT&T today and getting the fiber installed because whoever we got now is trash. So, thank you. I will send you an email.
Yeah, and hopefully, whoever listens to this gains something. Hopefully, you gain something. I did as well.
I'm always learning. That's why I like talking with people smarter than me. Hey, do it. Do it.
I'm about to have 4 listings on one piece of land.
Do it. The way the regulations are going, you just got to keep adding. Just keep adding to your property. There you go. All right. I'll send you an email to request if you want a specific photo used on the thumbnail on YouTube or any other things you want me to advertise or market for you. Okay.